Well, good morning, everyone. What a delight to have the First Coast Flute Choir with us this Sunday morning. This group is composed of all volunteers with various background stories who are all connected with their love of the flute. We appreciate them being here today and sharing the sweet sounds of this beautiful instrument and its various forms. We will hear two pieces from them today. We'll start the service with Mixing the Malt, and we'll hear the second piece called Twilight a little later in the service. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to the First Coast Flute Choir. was simply wonderful. Thank you so much to all of the talented flutists for sharing that with us. Their music tells its own story. And speaking of telling stories, in the words of David Breeden, welcome to a new story. Welcome to a day unwritten. We gather to speak of possibility. We remember the losses. We celebrate the victories. We embrace the possible over than the probable, weaving a story of hope. Join us in this new story. Join us in the day unwritten. Join us in the future of possibility. Those are encouraging words to open our service, this story that we are creating together right now. We are getting ready to listen to another intriguing story that our amazing director of lifespan religious education, Beth Curtis, has selected for us. The time for all ages is always one of the most treasured times in our service, and today, Beth wants to share a video that was created by the students of the University of North Carolina's Upperman African American Cultural Center. And afterwards, she'll join us at the chancel to discuss this story.
Hey, have you heard the story of Sankofa?
Children, gather around. Let me tell you a story of a bird who lived a long time ago in a village far, far away. Who lived in Compton.
Who lived in Atlanta.
In North Carolina.
Who lived in New York.
Who lived in New York City. Wilmington, North Carolina.
This village was named Wilmington. And in this village, there was a bird.
A beautiful bird.
Named Sankofa.
Named Sankofa.
Named Sankofa.
Her name was Sankofa.
So Sankofa, she was bad. Like, she was it. She was all that in the bag of chips.
Sankofa was one of the freshest birds around.
She showed boldness.
As she should.
And sass.
She was intelligent. She was kind. She had a spirit that was great inside and out.
I feel like you're describing me. I love it.
This bird that lived in this village, she had the most beautiful feathers. She had feathers all different colors, blue as the sky.
And purple feathers that were so royal.
Feathers as yellow as the sun.
Pink feathers that were as pink as bubblegum.
She had feathers that were as black. As black as what? As what? As you may ask, and you did. Black as the night sky that had the northern star that led her ancestors to freedom.
Green feathers, green as the most fertile grass. Red as the fire.
Amen. Hot.
She had beautiful feathers, vibrant. She was the brightest, most beautiful bird in her village. Everybody admired Sankofa. She would walk around strutting, showing what her mama gave her.
Would strut around North Carolina, and as she strutted through her village, all the other birds would look at her and they would say, ooh,
Ooh.
ooh, ooh, Sankofa, ooh, Sankofa, Sankofa,
Sankofa.
Sankofa.
And so she would walk around, and as she did walk around, do you know what everybody would say?
What they say?
They would say, ooh, Sankofa. Oh, so you've heard this story.
Yeah, a little bit.
So she strutted and strutted and strutted. With her head held high, she strutted. One day she actually left.
Sankofa had never left their home before.
Sankofa took a little trip.
In another land that she didn't recognize as North Carolina. And one day they left their home to go to Nevada.
In Montana.
She went to Iowa.
Iowa. Girl.
While they were walking around this new place, they ran to another type of bird they had never met before.
And they were bland.
They just looked real unseasoned. It was a mess.
These birds began to make fun of Sankofa. They asked her what her name was.
Oh, I'm Sankofa. Like, I don't know what you thought this was.
San Cuckoo.
That is so ghetto. What's a Sankofa?
heard of that?
What kind of name is that? How do you even spell that?
We'll call you Sandy.
The birds just went up to her and started talking about her and saying, oh, you know, you're not supposed to look like this. You're supposed to look like us.
Why are you tan? Girl, don't do that.
And so Sankofa was hurt.
She cried and she cried, and she eventually left the birds and found her way back home. And when she found all the people at home that kept telling her she was beautiful, she asked them, why did y'all lie to me?
Why did you not tell me I was ugly?
Why didn't you tell me that I looked crazy? Why did you never tell me that I was looking dusty and musty and crusty?
You let me walk around thinking I was better than I was? Why would you do that?
Why did you never tell me that I was raggedy?
And the birds all looked at her, hearts broken, as she cried and went in her room to go to sleep.
So all of our friends and the elders of New York, they went and thought, how can we repair our broken, beautiful bird?
How do we restore what's been broken?
What can we do? What can we do to help her see herself the way we see her? So they crafted an egg.
They crafted a golden egg.
And this egg, it had the knowledge of the people, it had the black girl magic, it had the black boy joy, it had the history, it had the legacy, it had all that and a little bit of spice, and they gave it to Sankofa in her sleep.
Containing all of their shared history, heritage, culture, and knowledge. They placed the egg in Sankofa's mouth.
And they put the egg and stuck it in her mouth, just like you see here.
Naturally, she woke up confused. She said, why
I was trying to kill me.
Right, she said, why are y'all doing all this? Like, what was the point of this?
The elders responded, child, this is the egg of your people.
This egg is your essence. This essence makes you your descendants. This egg is what makes you, Sankofa. You are not alone in your journey. You have your legacy of people behind you, your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, and all of them combined.
And so, whenever you see the image of a Sankofa bird, you'll always see her holding the egg in her mouth with her head turned backwards as she moves forward.
She will always remember what her ancestors taught her in this golden egg.
And they said, do you know what Sankofa means?
What does it mean?
It means go back and fetch it.
Sankofa simply means go back and fetch it.
Because Sankofa means to go back and fetch it.
She will go back and fetch it.
Go back and fetch it. Go back and fetch it.
To go forwards, we first have to go fetch our past. And this is a story of Sankofa.
A few weeks ago in the children's classes, we used Sankofa to look back at last year's program and help us decide what parts allowed us to thrive and what parts didn't, and what parts we want to repeat or not repeat or change this year. The symbol of Sankofa, awesome, as seen here, is a bird with its feet facing forward but looking backwards, oftentimes with a precious egg on its back. Sankofa is a word from the Twi language of Ghana, which is a beautiful country in West Africa with a rich culture that has been passed down through the ages. Sankofa loosely translates to, as they said, go back and fetch it. But Sankofa doesn't mean we need to be beholden to the past, but rather it's how to progress and move forward. But Sankofa is a reminder as we are writing the story of our future that we need to remember and learn from the past. It's a way of understanding why and how we became who we are today and help us decide who we want to become in the future. And that precious egg that it turns back for, that precious egg symbolizes knowledge that can help us and those we pass it down to, like our youngsters, our families, our communities, and our friends. It can remind us, as we heard in the story, the knowledge that yes, Sankofa, we are all beautiful and talented and capable and enough. When we forget that, and sometimes we do, we still can go back there. We can go back and fetch it.
I'd like to officially welcome you to Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or BBUUC. My name is Alyssa Halliday, and I am happy to be your worship leader today. We are a people of all ages, people of many stories, and people of many beliefs. We are brave, curious, and compassionate thinkers and doers. We create stories of spirituality and community beyond boundaries, working for more justice and more love in our own lives and the world. Unitarian Universalism draws from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. The values we share are included on the back of your order of service. I'd like to acknowledge any guests or newcomers that came out to join us on this wonderful Sunday. If you are a new visitor, we warmly welcome you to our humble church. If you'd like to learn more about our church or Unitarian Universalism, we invite you to check out all of the literature on our welcome table in the back near the entryway. We also have regularly scheduled Learn About UU and Learn About BBUUC classes year-round. And if you have any questions or needs, don't hesitate to ask any of our members. They will assist you or direct you to those who can better answer your questions. We invite you to join us after the service for refreshments found at the back of the sanctuary, including coffee, snacks, and maybe swapping some of your own stories with others. The wide universe is the ocean I travel is a line from our opening hymn this morning, and this ties into the story we are creating in our service together today. I'd like to invite the song leaders up to help lead us in hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home, which can be found in the teal hymnal. We will be singing all 3 verses, and remember to turn the page because it's a page turner. I invite you to stand in body or spirit and join in singing.
Thank
I love that song. Covenanting is at the heart of the practice of Unitarian Universalism. Our religious ancestors created our tradition as a faith community bound not by allegiance to a particular creed, that is, specific beliefs, but rather by faithfulness to a covenant, that is, a set of mutual promises to each other and to something greater than ourselves. Our congregational covenant can be found in your order of service, and each week we read aloud these promises that we made to each other together. I invite you to join me. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. We light our chalice each Sunday morning as a symbol of our faith. I'd like to invite Claudia Marshall up to illuminate our chalice. And these are the words of Reverend Dr. David Breeden. We tender this flame, opening the book, turning to a page yet to be written, opening a story yet to be told. May we fill this fresh page wisely. May we write a new story into being. May we together inscribe the page with hope. Thank you, Claudia. We sing our call to worship every Sunday morning as an invitation to come together and be present for this worship service. You may have walked into this building individually, carrying your morning's ups and downs, but you are now joined together as a community of this congregation. Singing our call to worship is an opportunity for us to ground ourselves and put our good intentions out there for how we want to be in this worship space together. Please rise and body your spirit and join me in singing our sacred call to worship. The words are printed in your order of service. Victoria Weinstein reminds us that this congregation is theologically diverse religious community with membership open to all who are in accordance of our shared values, mission, and vision. We are an independent member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, an association of approximately 1,000 congregations in this country and elsewhere in the world. Our congregation is entirely self-governed and financially supported by the voluntary generosity of our members and friends. To this end, let there be an offering to sustain the work of this beloved community. You can find giving envelopes in the hymnals. For those who prefer an alternative method, you can find the QR code in your order of service to donate or go to the donate link at bbuuc.org. Whether you choose to donate at this time or not, please participate in this ritual by passing the plate down your row and back to the next. After the offering is complete, please stand in body or spirit and sing our offertory hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life. At this time, I'd like to invite our ushers for today, Bruce Crystal and Adaro Harrison, to come forward to accept the offering. The morning offering will be gratefully received. Our very own Elizabeth DeCoux will be reading a sermon from Reverend Kaaren Anderson, who serves as the Interim Minister for First Parish, Brewster, UU. This sermon goes with our Soul Matters theme for this month, which is Living Love Through the Practice of Story. The sermon is titled, The Stories We Tell Ourselves. Elizabeth, I'll happily turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. It's a little piece of bad luck to take a sip of water right before you get up to talk and have it go down the wrong way. But if you'll stay with me, I'll do my best. As Alyssa said, I'm reading a sermon entitled "The Stories We Tell Ourselves," written by Reverend Kaaren Anderson. Reverend Anderson has two important reminders in this sermon, so I invite you to listen for those two reminders. And please be aware that she touches on the topic of child abuse. Reverend Anderson begins. It was just over 3 years ago now, I got one of those calls. The kind of call in which the person on the other end of the line starts by telling you to sit down. So I promptly sat down. Max is dead. That's what I heard on the other end of the line. Max is gone. He was 27. Max is the only son, the only child of one of my very best friends. When Max was in middle school and high school, I was pretty tight with him. He and I did a lot of work nationally with Planned Parenthood, reproductive health, and sex education. Suffice it to say, this news laid me flat, had me staring out of windows, empty, vacant, and as my friend says about the loss of her son, inconsolable. I was that too. I did Max's memorial service in Rochester, New York. I connected daily with my friends about all the aspects of what needed to be said, how to say it, when to say it, in what tone, in what manner. Ultimately, how to celebrate this remarkable young man's life. Writing a eulogy, a service of remembrance, at its best, is telling the story of someone's life. It's telling the story that draws out the meaning of that life and helps those who mourn have something true and bright to hold on to. Teasing out something about who the person was that can live on in others so the survivors can have and hold that person. I'm always trying to find something about the deceased that is essential to their being and helps others integrate that essence into their lives. As I was telling the story of Max's life, as I mourned and wrote and mourned and wrote, I came across something that cut through the haze, that opened me up to the living, to those of us alive a bit more. It's a piece written by Dick Gilbert entitled "Celebrate the Interval," which I'd like to read for you. Life is a brief interval between birth and death. It is composed of a few notes between prelude and postlude. It is a drama quickly played between the rising and falling of the curtain. What shall we do with the interval of time? What combination of notes shall we play? The brevity of day is full of pain. Discordant notes reverberate in the soul. The ending of the play is never in doubt. Why then are we so careless with time? Why do we not sound the music of our hearts? Is it not time to play our own melody? Life is a brief interval between birth and death. May we celebrate the interval with joy. May we sing the song belonging to us. May we act as though our very life depended on it, because it does. Reverend Anderson follows up that quote by telling us the words in that reading which really stood out for her. May we sing the song that belongs to us. Max had his own song he was working on, and it got cut short in the second movement. When working on Max's memorial and reading Dick's piece, something shifted in me. I started having greater empathy for the living, mainly because over the years I've watched way too many people get stuck on the same note, or stuck in one movement of their life, or just when they had a crescendo flourishing, they start a decrescendo not of their own making. Or sometimes it is of their own making. I've gotten stuck myself more often than I'd like to admit. And well, it's infuriating, actually, because I know the song that belongs to me. And yet I can get waylaid, sometimes immobilized, stuck on one note. There are a lot of reasons for that, but today I wanted to touch on two of them that can stop us from living into the song that belongs to us, the song that belongs only to you. So I have reminders. I have two of them to carry us through. The first reminder: a friend of mine is Korean and was adopted by a white family here in the United States. I'm not going to use my friend's real name, so I'm going to call her Lynn. One day, Lynn started talking to me about the stories that we are told, the ones we know to be true, as they shape who we are growing up to be. And the story that Lynn was told about her adoption from Korea was this: that she was brought to the adoption agency in Korea in a basket with clean, pressed clothes on, swaddled in a nice blanket, and a note pinned onto the front of her chest that read, "Please help care for our family. We're very poor, and you can make a difference to our child." It was a sweet story, right? A story of concern and care. Now, Lynn said she always believed that story as her parents had told it to her. And it was a nice story to hold on to start yourself out in the world. Lynn said she never questioned the story until she went to college. Now, I should also say that as she was telling me this story, she showed me some burn marks that she had on her arm and on the backs of her legs. At college, Lynn took a lot of international women's studies courses, and in one of those courses, she discovered that Korea, China, and Russia sent thousands of female babies to the US in the 1980s. And Lynn realized that her story may not have been so rosy, because none of the stories she was hearing in her classes were rosy. None of them. It occurred to Lynn that there was a good chance that the burn marks on her skin were not by accident, but intentional. And that in fact, before her adoption, she was a neglected child, not a loved child. Fast forward a couple of years later, and it turns out Lynn had a coworker whose niece was about Lynn's age, adopted and of Korean descent. This young woman, the niece, went back to Korea to really find out more about her birth story and figure out who her birth parents were. When she got to the adoption agency, she was told the exact same story that Lynn had been told. That she showed up in a basket, clean clothes, laundered blanket, the same details down to the exact same words. The likelihood that her burn marks were accidental went right out the window. She came to terms with the fact that she was probably left to die somewhere, in a field or a trash can or in the street, exactly as she had heard about in her women's studies classes. She says her parents probably always knew this, but they liked believing in the story, and they wanted her to believe in it as well. I can understand that from her parents' point of view. It's a compassionate thing to do, to tell your child the sweet story. But when Lynn told her parents the real story, they did not want to alter the storyline. Or as she said, maybe they couldn't. They needed to hold on to the myth. As for Lynn, she's grateful for the truth. It changed her own perception of herself, of who she knows herself to be at her core. Or perhaps the better way of saying it is, it solidified who she knew herself to be. Resilient, flexible, and strong. She said her desire to leave the world a better place had always felt like it came from somewhere deep in her unconscious, and now she understands why. So here's the thing. Lynn's story isn't just about going back and revising the story that was told to her, making the story more tender through forgiveness or understanding, through revision or reframing it. Lynn, in fact, became the fulcrum or the hinge that sets the story on a new path forward. She changed the tempo of her song, moved it to a new key, cut through the dissonance that was brewing in the background, and got real about her song. Lynn is not a person who says, I was an abused, abandoned, and unwanted child. As an adult, she is saying, I am a person who can look at my very dark past and realize it is part of my story, but it is not all of who I am. It's not me. It's just part of my story. I tell this to you because I think so many of us have dark and difficult pasts. We have had things done to us, tragedies that befell us, or we've participated in our own demise, our own colossal missteps, and we end up describing our stories through lenses that identify primarily with the tragedy. Victim, abandoned, abused, survivor, addicted, unwanted. But our dark past isn't us. It's part of a story, your story. And it can be written in a way that empowers you to acknowledge something about your life and then move on. You are not defined by the dark past that happened to you. You are you. So shape your story. Let it remind you that you have gained strength and insight from your dark past, rather than having it define you. And if you haven't yet gained strength and insight from it, make it so. Shape the story moving forward. Look at that dark, gloomy past and face it squarely. Come to terms with it. So the story doesn't control you, but instead, you control the story. The second reminder is about how we can get derailed from living into our song and how we can get back to singing our song. The truth is, we mess up a lot as humans. We just do. One of my favorite song lyrics says, "Once upon a time, a few mistakes ago." I love that little quip, a few mistakes ago. Not the last time I made a mistake, but a few mistakes ago. We make mistakes. But hey, lives can be meaningful, great lives, even with a lot of failure and humiliation. One person put it this way: mistakes don't have to be shameful. They can be signs of how little information we have on which to base the most consequential decisions. Messing up isn't a sign of evil. It's evidence of what we're up against. Not all the disasters are wasted anyway. Maybe we spent a decade not quite knowing what we wanted to do with ourselves professionally. Maybe we went through several failed relationships that left us confused and hurt a lot of people. But these experiences weren't meaningless. They were necessary to later growth and development. We have to forgive ourselves the horrors of our first draft, because the central character of the story isn't always responsible for every disaster or triumph. We have to forgive ourselves how bad our first draft of our story may have been. The first marriage that failed, or even the second for that matter, the unfulfilled dreams of being an activist, artist, parent, the career that ended in shambles, the relationship with a friend or colleague that ended poorly because of a lack of compromise or difference in values, the frustrated dreams of never living abroad or joining the Peace Corps, the schooling that fell through because our brains weren't fully developed at age 18, or because of lack of ambition or lack of motivation. Now, some of those are ours to own, and others are due to circumstances beyond our control. The economy, your parents, the government, your enemies. The truth is, it's hardly ever just us that messed up. It's a combination of outside factors and us. It's both, right? Except often when we look back at our first drafts of our lives, well, it's only us that messed up. At least that's what we tell ourselves. One of the reasons we end up looking at the first draft and getting stuck is because we look around at the rest of the people in our lives, friends, colleagues, other parishioners, neighbors, leaders, and what we see on the surface is shiny and bright and glowing in the sun. But what if I told you what you think is shiny and bright is not always the entire story? The question is, how do you not get yourself tripped up in the first draft, given that first drafts, for the most part, whether of stories or our lives, first drafts are often garbage? Well, first, forgive yourself and others. To forgive doesn't mean you forget. It means you release yourself and others from a time and place that has you stuck. Self-forgiveness is essential. And then move on. I know of an art teacher who, when you make a mistake, they'd say to you, yes, you made a mistake. Now make it beautiful. Not to erase it or gloss over it, paint over it, scratch it out, but make it beautiful. That's what we can do with our mistakes. Make them beautiful. I have a colleague who visited Africa. He learned about a community in Africa who believed that we're each created with our own song. Their tradition as a community is to sing that song as a welcome when a child is born, as a comfort when the child is ill, in celebration when the child marries, and in affirmation and love when death comes. Most of us were not welcomed into the world that way. Few of us seem to know our own song. So, I need to ask you a favor. I'm asking you to realize that many of us get stuck in the early part of our song, not because of death like Max, but because we make it so. Many of us, even when we are getting on in life, are still singing the first few lines of our song. We still believe our first drafts. I'm imploring you on this day, please don't become the dead among the living. Please resist that. Let's all help each other resist that. And in doing so, let's open our songs. Let's make them a symphony. Let all the instruments play, all the melodies and harmonies. Let them come alive. Or to put it another way, let's live between the intervals. Death will take all of us far too soon, and it's a tragedy not to really, truly sing our songs in all their color, in all their majesty. So sing your song fully today and from this day forward. May it be so.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Let us take this invitation to sing our songs and live between the intervals as we sing our closing hymn together. I'd like to invite our song leaders back up to lead us in hymn number 346, Come Sing a Song With Me, which can be found in the gray hymnal. We will be singing, I guess we should cut it a little short because we're a little over time. So let's just do the first two verses. And I invite you to stand and embody your spirit and join in singing. Please remain standing for the benediction. I'd like to invite Claudia back up, please, to extinguish the chalice as we hear these words from Reverend Sherry Woodbury. May we have the courage to speak or write the stories within us that need to be told, the stories that make up our lives. May we listen with a loving mind and heart to the stories of others' lives, others here in this church, and others in our wider community and world. Let us choose with care the stories that we teach to our children, remembering that all of our stories have power and that all of our stories are connected, for all of life is one. In the name of all that is sacred and these gathered hearts, may it be so. Amen. Thank you for being here with us today.